All right, so let me start sharing my screen. All right, so today I'm going to give you the second assignment, okay, which is to decide your project idea. And then before that, I will need to show you, let me find out my cursor, exactly what kind of ideas we're looking for, and then how to find it, okay. All right, so let me actually get this slide here. Make sure I can open the chat window here somewhere. Okay, so chat window. Okay. All right, so if you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop that in the chat box. I can still see that, okay? All right, so we'll talk about the problem, talk about the ideas. Now, this actually fits to the very important topic in software engineering. Okay, last time, if you remember, I briefly went through the development process you will have in a regular software company, from the requirements to some of the features, and then a bunch of meetings, and then engineer go to start the development. After that, you will still have a lot of maintenance, bug fixing, the next release, all of those, right? So this actually is the very first and then also really critical step, okay, for the whole software development, which is called requirement analysis, okay? So requirement analysis is pretty easy to understand, okay? Could everyone actually mute yourself? I think there's some kind of background noise here. And also I need to just close Discord, okay? It has too much messages. All right. Okay. All right, so let's keep going. So requirement analysis, okay, pretty easy to understand. Basically, you want to make a software, and then you want to figure out exactly what you want to make, and then specifically what are the features and functions you want to have. So you have to collect the requirements and then make a plan on how you want to implement it. So having the right requirements is obviously the most important first step, and otherwise your software won't be right. Okay, so this one sounds really simple, straightforward. It's just about knowing what you want to do. But in reality, this part is much more difficult than you saw. Okay, so I'm going to share you this little image here. Okay, so it's probably you have seen different versions. Okay, but it shows a lot of interesting realities in the software development world. For example, the first one talks about how the customers explains how they want to have this software, what kind of features, what it should look like. And then if you keep going to the second image, that's how the project leader understood it. So not sure if you can see the kind of meaning behind it, right? So the project leader normally is the project manager, the one talk to the customer. They always like to commit a lot of stuff, and they will say yes to everything so that they can get the project. After that, they will tell the team, okay, this is not something hard. We can definitely do it. So that's how they will understand that anything the customer said, they will think they can do it, and then also it's not really difficult. That's how the project leader think about the software problem. And then when the engineer design it, right? So we're very, very technical. So we like very technically fancy stuff. So we like to, sometimes overcomplicate it, but or just design it in a really technical way. But however, when we start to write the program, the first image on the first row, and we don't have the capability to, get everything done perfectly. And then we start to code well in the beginning, but after a while, we realize the code is too complicated. We don't want to do it well. And then, so eventually the software just pretty much is what it looks like on the fourth image. However, no matter how you build your software, how your software has been built, the sales guys always very confident to kind of try to sell it, right? So they will say basically anything the customer is looking for, they will can say yes. And then the next one about the documentation is pretty much empty. Nobody likes regular documentation with software. The operations, we'll talk more about this one. In software, operation means that how you maintain all the day-to-day operation work for your software. For example, if you're having the web service, web application, then you need to, for example, clean up the logs. You need to back up the databases. All of this, non-functional things, but you need to do it periodically. Again, it's not really well prioritized. Nobody really do it. However, software is still very expensive. And then obviously for software, most of us, we don't have a help desk to help you. A good example is for Google. If you have anything really with Google, you can't really reach out to the customer service. They don't have a customer service for you. All right. And then the last image here is really funny. It says what the customers really needed. Okay. So as you can see, the first one is so much different from what engineer and the programmers write it. But also it's funny that the first one is so much different from the first one, which is how the customer described that in the very beginning. Okay, so for this set of images, it shows a lot of realities. But today, I really want you to focus on this two little problem. Number one, the things we are implementing as a software engineer, as computer science major, are very often different from what our customers are looking for. And problem number two, for customers themselves, they don't even know what they're looking for in many, many cases. Okay, so this is the more software you would do, the more frequently you will have this kind of situation. It's actually very, very expected because we as a computer science major, we know coding and programming very well, but we don't know much about the other domains. For example, today, if people ask us to build a accounting software, okay, so we kind of know what they're looking for, calculate a number, recording a number, but there's so much details we have no idea how it works. So it can only be based on what the customer told us and based on our understanding. But if we misunderstood some of the things, the software won't be right. All right. But also for the customer, right? So they know what they want, but they just have idea. They have a concept. I need a software to help me to do all this accounting. But exactly how the UI should look like, what is the best way to get these things done step by step? The customers are not expert on software. They're not expert on UI and the user experience. So in many cases, what they told you are not really ideal. So because of this, the whole requirement analysis become very, very complicated. You can see so many projects, even some of the big projects, that they spend so much money at the end they deliver the software, but when they start to use it, and either it's just not working or it's not the functions the customer is looking for, and then they have to come back to change it. Sometimes they just can't really afford of changing everything from scratch, and that whole project will be just wasted. All right. So these are the situation in the software field. It's been there for such a long time. It's getting better and better because we're actually trying to adapt different approaches, which we'll focus on this course. But here, I just want you to know that the whole requirement analysis is way more difficult than you thought. Okay, so here, to solve this problem, you will need two important principles in your mind. Today, we're going to talk about the first one, and then later on, we'll talk about the ideal development, and we'll see how the other one can help solve this problem as well. All right. So because of that, and let me keep going, the requirements analysis is a very, very important field in software engineering. So there is a subdomain called requirements engineering, specific focus on this part. Okay. And I don't know how many of you are going to go to grad school. And when you go to grad school, you will need to choose a specialization. Today I know a lot of students are willing to do something on machine learning, on AI, but machine learning and AI are only popular in the recent years. When I was in the grad school, nobody really do AI because everyone knows that AI is pretty much for toys. Okay, you can't really do too much about AI. At that time, like software engineering, some of this, distributed computing, which means like the web services, cloud computing, those were much more popular. And at that time, requirements engineering was also a very big field. Okay, there were so many researchers and professors working on this field. There are a lot of good conferences every year talking about this one. Okay, they don't really talk about the coding. All they're doing is about how do we get the requirements things done correctly. Okay, so some of the example I can show you that there are so many groups that build this kind of software that allows you to specify the requirements in such a very formal way with different kind of graphs, with some of the automated text extraction and generate some of this feature table. This is just some of the research examples people are doing and trying to improve the quality of requirements analysis, right? But however, what I found and after I started work is that requirements engineering was such an important topic in the software engineering courses. Okay, when I was taking my courses in undergrad and also in the grad school, so I read a lot of software engineering books. There were even a lot of schools offer specific courses on software requirement analysis. So the whole course is about requirements. Before I go to the interview, I realized that's such an important thing to do. I was expecting, well, once I started work, I would need to do all this formal specification and get the requirements right. However, once I joined some of the teams in Amazon, started to do all this development, I realized nobody really doing that. Nobody even talk about requirements. Requirements is correctly, but it is very important. But people were thinking about that from a different way. They know this is very hard to get it right, but that's why they try to use some of the methodologies to reduce the risks. Okay, so that's where I find that the practice is so much more different from the series. That's why for this course, I'm only going to spend this one lecture to talk about requirements. I'm actually not going to touch some of these formal approaches and tools and how you can use that one to write documentation. That's pretty much a waste of time because it's only the researchers are doing that. I would say they're useful in certain situations, but in the typical and trending software development world today, nobody is really doing that. So I want you guys to focus on the practical perspective of software requirements, and then use that one to build your project. All right. So what I really found in the company, not only the big company, but also the small startup companies, the requirements become really, really simple, right? Today, whenever you join a team or a company, pretty much all the engineers and especially the product managers, development managers, they know something really important, okay? The requirements is hard to get right. So that's why you, first of all, you really need to get that from the real users and the customers, because they are the ones who is going to use that. So you will need to talk to them very, very carefully. And then if you don't talk to them, if you just assume some of the features, if you just assume some of the idea, if you just create some of this hypothesis, and in many cases, you will actually fall into this really dangerous situation where the engineers all feel like we have the best UI design, we have the most reasonable feature, but pretty much always when you deliver the software, it will not be something people can use at all, right? So getting to the customers, getting the users and talk to them, that's really, really important when you do the requirements. And then you should never start anything to code anything before you even talk to your users, okay? Because in many cases, they will give you so much more different perspective. And with the information you get from the customers, then you can go ahead to develop your requirements and then try to narrow it down and then break it down into the features and functionality of the software. All right. And then later on, when you start to develop, in order to guarantee that the features you're building is really what the customers want, rather than the image I showed you in the first slide, we need to follow the agile development to try to do more frequent deliveries and more frequent releases so that the customer can constantly trying those. So we'll talk more about those maybe in another 1 or 2 weeks, and we'll talk about agile development. Today, I want to focus on the first part, which is getting the right requirements from customer. How can you get that one? What should you focus on? Okay. And then the idea I want to share with you is really, really very simple. Okay. We want you to actually look at the problems people are facing, to identify the problems people are facing. And then the problem I'm talking about here are about the users' problems in their life, in their experiences. The problem has nothing to do with the code, with software, okay? So we want you to find the customer's problem, what their problem is, and is that a real problem? And then think about how you could solve that problems by building a software. So with that idea, you will know what features to add. You will know what features are more important, which ones should be prioritized. Because if they solve the problem, then yes, they're more important. Okay, so the rest of the slides, I kind of shared that in the summer as well as in the spring when I talk about the mobile class. I don't know how many of you were in that two classes in the past half year, but some of the examples are similar. I might also bring some of the new examples. Even you have seen that part of the talk, I still encourage you to look at this carefully. Okay, so the problem idea, the approach I'm going to share with you today, is really really important. Not only important about this whole requirements analysis, but also one day if you want to make your own startup company, your own startup project, you really need to keep this in mind. Okay, if you don't have this right problem to solve, your project will be basically fail very badly. Okay, so let me actually start sharing this kind of idea. So some of you were asking me what kind of project I should make for my team. Okay, so here is my guidance. I told you I don't really limit any kind of idea. You can do anything you want as long as they solve a good problem, a real problem. All right, so let me give you more example to illustrate how this idea works, why this is so important. Okay, a lot of this are experience I have in my kind of a development life in the past 10 years at different projects. Okay, so I kind of told you last week that for those of you who didn't see this project before, I work on a couple of startup companies, and then this is one of them. All right, so at one point we were doing this mobile AR project, okay, augmented reality. So before I give you any detail, let me just show you this quick demo that actually tells you the basic idea. All right. So this one is about like you, for example, get up in the morning, you find that your car runs out of battery, and then you need to jump start a car. The problem is, how do I do it? Okay, a lot of you probably done that many times. You know exactly what to do, pretty easy. Some of you probably never done that, or you've done it for a long time ago and you can't remember what to do. All right, so this is how we can solve this problem. Let me actually play this video.
Cars today can do anything you want, except help you out at this moment. But this is all the help you need. And it can even make this into less of a mystery. Yeah, you always knew you were a car guy.
All right, so now sure you get got idea. Okay, so you don't know what to do, and right now I guess you guys can go to YouTube to search how to jump start a car, right? So I think you can find that video pretty quickly, or just simply go to Google to find it. But then the problem is you still need to search, and then you need to filter out the result. And if you see the video, for example, they show you a demo with a sedan, and this is SUV, and then is there anything different? And you might see some of the port from the video, but this is a different model. Would that be the same, right? So that's where you spend most of the time. So what this technology can provide you is to take a picture of this real car, real engine, and we can recognize some of these ports, positive ground, and then how do you do that step by step? You can click on some of these overlays and then to show you some of the content on top of it. So basically it gave you a better experience of retrieving the information, and faster and also more accurate, and more it's easier to understand. And because we can just directly put all the content on the photo. And what the technology provides you is how do we recognize this object, but also how to recognize this specific area on this photo. All right, so I will show you more example about this one. So this is the mobile AR project. And then at that time, I was still working in Amazon as full-time engineer. And one day one of my professors called me and they said, oh, I got this good project you want to join to do the startup. And I took out this video demo. I know exactly how hard it is to make this. I said, this is amazing. And then I started working with them part-time, for 2 or 3 months. And then later on, just quit Amazon and join this company. Right. So there's a lot more things we can do with this technology. For example, you can let's say that I gave you this example. You went to the street, you take a picture, we recognize all this restaurant and stores. Another good case, for example, in the construction field, we did a lot of examples. So in the construction field, you actually need to file a lot of reports and documentation. They use tons of documentation, as you can imagine. But managing those is very difficult. Now using this technology, we can take a picture of this whole building, and then we can identify the areas where they have reports, and you can just click on this area, and then automatically pop up all this reports, documentation, design documentation for you to search, right? So it's a really easy and convenient way to retrieve the information. So that was the technology. All right. So this is a startup company, and then I quit the job in Amazon. I drove from Seattle back to Nashville because the team was mainly based in Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, right? So moved back to the south, and then this was the office. As you can see, a very typical startup setting that we have. They actually put all this wall to be the whiteboard so they can write on top of it. So they just wrote everything on it. And there was a little ping pong table. I don't think people are using that a lot. And then there was, as you can see, the picture on the bottom left corner. That was the Romney the election. That was back in 2012, I think. Yes, 2012. Actually, no, end of 2011 and 2012. Right. So it's the time flies. It's like 8 years, and now it's a new election. And anyway, so that was the startup. Okay, so this one here. Okay, so I had to tell you that this company started really, really well. We got an initial seed funding from one of the VCs from Boston. I got a $1.1 million funding. And then we got a couple of really good awards. And then one of the good ones in 2013 CES. Okay, so you guys know that one in Las Vegas every year in January. So the CES is mostly for the electronic consumer products, but they also have some of the software stuff. So we actually won one of the awards. It's in the mobile software category. We got this innovation award. Okay, pretty good. And then also we got some of this award in the South by Southwest, same year in 2013. So this one here, again, even today, when you look at this technology, guys, I don't know how many of you are familiar with computer vision. It's not easy to do. I will show you more quick examples. It's very technical. So that's why in the early days, back in 2012, 13, when we were showing this one, okay, at that time, most people don't even know what AR is. Now you guys know what AR is. You play Pokemon Go, and you have some other apps. But at that time, AR was very, very early. Even mobile was still kind of, kind of early compared with today. So the technology was really, really cool. So I wasn't very surprised to see we got so many good awards. So we got a great start. The team was very, very confident. Okay, but then the short story is this company actually didn't work out. Okay, we actually raised all the money after 1 year. So when you heard about this $1 million fund, you think that's actually a lot. It's actually not. So that's one thing you should keep in mind. When you are doing the software company, it's really, really expensive. Okay, and not sure how what do you guys think about where the money went for the $1 million? Any comments? Yes, exactly. Okay, SaaS, definitely not service. Okay, service is really, really cheap compared with the salaries. It's all about the money. Okay, so every day when you see this news from the tech industry, certain X company raised X amount of dollars, like millions of dollars, A round funding, and this company get valuation of $300 million funding. You think they got so much money, and what are they gonna do? I can tell you those money only need can support them for 1 to 2 years. For startups, they need to raise a new round of money within 2 years at most. Okay, it all pretty much goes to the salaries. I think that's why that's a good news. Okay, because that just means that how much you guys will be paid after you graduate, because the software engineer becomes much more expensive right now, even for startup company, guys. If you go to the Bay Area, join startup company right now, if people gave $100,000, they can't really get any good engineers. Even startup, they sometimes have to offer more, because otherwise, why do I work for startup? I need to work for Facebook or Google. So I think getting 150,000, that's very, very typical. Okay, so it's really expensive. And also, I explained to you last time, if the company pays you $150,000 a year, um, the cost is much more than that. Okay, they may need to pay everything in total 200,000 because of the tax, benefits, a lot of other stuff. All right, so that's where all the money goes. Okay, the developer can eat this money really quickly. All right. Anyway, so the company didn't work out. I want to share more about the experience. Sometimes, when you see this failed experience, it gives you a little bit more insight and more thing to learn. Okay, so a little bit kind of history on what we did during that 1 year. So the first couple of months, we built a lot of this technology, pretty much how you take a pictures to build a model for the object, and then how do you attach the overlays. Eventually, how do you do the localization? So basically, if you take a new picture, and then how do we know which part of the picture you're looking at? Okay, so I don't have much time to talk about the technical things, but they use a lot of machine learning and computer vision. But remember, this was back in 2011, 12. Okay, I was very advanced. So after that, we got a nice prototype and demo. We start to try to sell it. Okay, that's very important for a startup. You have to prove, once you got funding, you need to prove you can generate revenue. Revenue is about everything. Okay, you don't have to make money. For example, like when Uber or went public, I don't think they even make profit. Okay, but that's okay. They got a huge revenue for a huge big company. That's something I recently learned. You don't want to criticize them if they don't make money. However, if they got $1 billion revenue at that size, okay, that's a very big number. All they need to do is adjust their business slightly, okay, and they can turn that revenue into some profits. Okay, so you need to show you can sell it. All right, so the way we do it, so this is obviously a typical 2B business. So to business partners, so you don't really directly sell this to consumers. So we try to talk to the company to see if they want to use this technology. All right, so we have a lot of sales guys here in the company, and they just try to find all their connections to connect to this company and then try to pitch this idea. So normally we set up a meeting, mostly just a remote meeting, the virtual meeting, just like we're doing right now, and then we try to demo the technology. And I was the one that did a lot of these demos, and then eventually we try to do some discussion and have hope to make a deal. So this is normally how we do the sales process. But what I found at the end is this whole kind of meeting most of the time didn't went very well. What instead of making a deal at the end, okay, normally we just end up with having this discussion. Having discussion is expected, but the discussion didn't really turn out to be anything productive. Okay, one of the common feedback question we got from the customers are, "Oh, we saw this technology; it's really cool. Wow, this is amazing." All right. However, let me think about how and where I can use that. All right, and then so that's pretty much one comments we got very common. Okay. Oh, by the way, you know actually Sapient? I saw they're a digital marketing company. And so we did talk to a lot of digital marketing companies that because this one is very easy to do advertisements. You take a picture and then you show the content, and then um, it's a very good way and fun way to interact with the brands, right? So I remember actually I went to did this demo to Sapient in Boston. I'm not sure if that's their headquarters, but yeah, so that's how we connect with them. So, but back to this meeting, okay? So the customer all like it. They were shocked, especially the ones who know technology. They think this is very cool, but then very immediately they started thinking about how can we use this, right? So at that time, or sales guys jump in to say, oh, actually you can do this. For example, you can add this one to your app, and then you can let your customer take a picture, and then recognize this and that, and then attach this content and that content, all of those, right? However, as I was in most of the meetings, I did realize that most of the times when our people are pitching these ideas and use cases, they didn't really kind of impress the customers. Okay, and so I gave you a couple of examples. First example is Target. So this is back in mid 2012. Actually, we went to their San Francisco R&D center. They have a very strong technical team in San Francisco. So this is the idea we pitched to them. Okay, we told them, you saw this technology, you have your target consumer app. Why don't you actually add this feature to your app so that customers can take a picture and recognize all this product in your store if they want to look for certain information. And then you can attach, for example, the product details page, some of the coupons, and so that they can click and get those. And so after hearing that idea, the target guy said, well, it could work, but I can tell you that most of the commerce customer won't spend time to look for the individual product information in the store, because they have done a lot of customer studies in their stores. They have a couple of stores in San Francisco where they run a lot of experiments. Sometimes you don't even know it, but they do a lot of experiments for customer behaviors. And they said that most customers want to, hurry up and finish their shopping, get the things done, and then leave. They don't want to spend extra time to look for specific information. And besides, if they want to do that, there's always something they can use. For example, scan a barcode, which is faster than taking a picture. Okay, so this looks really cool and fun way to do it, but in reality, people probably won't do it. But then the good thing is later on, they gave us a kind of their idea, their problem, which I think is a much better example. So this is what they told us. So they were asking, okay, no, I understand your technology, but there is one problem I think this technology might be able to solve. So they kind of started to explain that, we, for example, found that the customers have a really big problem of making the right decision when they go to shopping, especially when they have a lot of choices, right? So when you go to, for example, a store like Costco, and they actually don't give you that many choices, that's a kind of good thing. But when you go to the regular supermarket, okay, they particularly use this cereal box example. So they said that every Target store in the US, you can find one aisle completely filled up with all the cereals, different brands, over 100 different brands. But then they actually found out that the customer will have difficulties to select what they want. I don't know how many of you are really a big fan of cereals. I'm pretty sure you will have one or two brands you get it very often. I don't think you're going to change and try the different brands every time. But if this is for the first time you buy it, and which one do I pick? They all look like very good and professional, packaging. So at this time, they said, can you actually take a picture of the whole aisle and then be able to recognize the ones with, for example, gluten-free? Or some customers are just looking for something that's on sale. Or they're just looking for things like that has very good reviews. So you click on these filters. All right, guys, could you actually mute yourself? All right. So here, let me continue. So basic to summarize. So they said that instead of taking a picture to look at one product, can you take a picture for the whole aisle and identify the things they're looking for, the type of things they're looking for, so that you can reduce the search space when they try to make the shopping decision, right? So we really like that idea, and then this is actually the prototype we deliver. And then if you think about this problem, actually it makes so much sense. Most of the time you won't need this, but if you were going to buy something new, and think about how many times you're kind of hesitating between a few items, you don't know what to do. You look at it back and forth at the end, you still don't know whether this is the best choice or not, right? So they know their customer really well, and then they gave us this problem. But I really want you to compare the second idea they gave us and with the first one. And obviously the second one is so much better than the first one. Now you think about the first one, it's really just a demo. It's not a real feature. And nobody is going to take a picture in the store and then just try to look at more information about this product. Okay, so that's one example to show you how the idea that we pitched cannot be at the same quality as the idea they really need, right? But then you also need to think about the problem behind it, because the reason we cannot come up with the second one is very simple. It's actually because we do not have any experience in the retail industry. Right? None of us ever work in the store. We never done any of the customer behavior research. That's why we cannot come up with this kind of problem. So we'll talk about more on this one. The bottom line is, if you don't actually go and choose the problem from the field you're familiar with, then it's very difficult to get this kind of good problems. All right, a second example, we talked to this Dunkin' Donuts. So the reason we talked to them is because they are also based in Boston, and then the VCs are in the same building as some of their teams. So they got a pretty good connection. So we got a meeting and then try to pitch them this idea. Again, we went there, we told them very confidently that you can take a picture of this menu board in the store, and we can pop up some of the reviews, the coupons, you can add some button for them to order online or on the phone. And then when the manager saw this one, they said, no, well, this is not going to work. If they were already in the store, right? So they take a picture here. Why are they still going to order this on the phone, right? And nowadays, people are all use a startup kind of a mobile app to order. That's very convenient, but that's convenient only when you order that before you get to the store. If you're already in the store, why are you still order that with the phone, right? So it doesn't make any sense. And then also they said, well, for the coffee and sandwiches, how many people are going to look at the reviews, right? So it's just not going to work. But again, luckily, they gave us a much better idea. So this guy actually kind of told us that we do have a problem that kind of, that your technology might be able to solve. So he said that, Dunkin' Donuts runs based on a franchise model, right? So this is totally different from Starbucks. Starbucks, they own all the stores. Dunkin' Donuts, they don't own the store. They just do the franchise. You can also open the Dunkin' Donuts store if you want. So they need to manage all the stores. And then one part of the thing they need to manage is how they actually display this kind of merchandise inside the store. This mugs and coffee boxes, key cups, all of this, where do they place them and how they should be placed. So they actually designed really specific planograms and then gave it to all the thousands of stores. So every single store is supposed to follow this design and place them, right? However, they said they have no idea on how the stores are following this design and whether what they're doing is correct or not, right? So they said, can you actually use your technology to take a picture and then automatically recognize whether these bags and mugs are placed correctly or not? If not, can you highlight them and tell them the information, right? When we got this idea, we got very excited. And then because obviously this is such a better idea than the one we pitched earlier about, the reviews and the coupons. And pretty much we realized every time we talk to a customer, we're talking about the coupons and reviews. And obviously it doesn't work for most of industries. So we had kind of take this idea and then make a really cool prototype. So here's the demo. Let me play this one again. This one is really technical. Okay, so it has a lot of stuff going on here. So this is the experiment we did in the office. Okay, you take a picture of this whole shelf. And as you can see, all these green boxes had been drawn on the cereal boxes. Okay, we use the cereal boxes because that's what the demo for the target example. And then the green means that this items are placed correctly. If you click on the item, then you can see the information. So now what I do is I go to mess up the shelf. All right, and then if you take a picture again, all right, so this red boxes shows you what's the problem and what did the item go wrong. And they will show you what's the right item should be there, and just by clicking on the items. The really cool part about this technology is, I'm going to show you in the next part of the demo, that if I actually, you can see now this time I'm actually a little bit further, and then you take a picture. So at this time, the same box can still be identified. And also you can see we adjusted the size of the boxes so that it still covers item in that picture really well. Okay, so anyway, that is the demo. All right, so back to this kind of example, as I showed you, this target example and also the Dunkin' Donuts example, you can see that the ideas we pitched from our sales team compared with the ones they gave us, they're totally in the two different levels. And obviously the one they gave us are so much more practical, so much more useful, right? So this is the idea that I really, that's some of the lessons I learned. Okay, so back to this idea about a problem, always think about what kind of problem can you solve with this technology. When we were talking about the target, recognizing a Coke can and an individual product, we never thought about this problem. We just thought, okay, this is what our technology can do, and then use this one to get some coupons or reviews. We never even think about what the problem we're trying to solve. But the ones they told us, every idea, there's a story behind it, because the guys know that they did a user's customer behavior study, that they found that making the shopping decision is difficult. They found that Dunkin' Donut managers cannot really manage how the different stores are following their designs. They didn't really think anything about the AR. They know their problem. And then they're trying to see how can they use technology to solve that problem. All right. So make sure that you can answer this kind of questions very, very well. And also make sure this is a real problem. Okay. Sometimes you think that, again, the Dunkin' Donuts example, the reviews. Right? Obviously, if you think about it, it's a really, really funny that it's obviously nobody really look at the reviews for the coffees and sandwiches, right? So sometimes you think it's a problem, but you really need to prove and verify it. And the best way to do that is actually by talking to the real customer and the users, right? So there are specific techniques that you can use to do this kind of customer interview. We call it customer discovery. Okay, so you can Google something on customer discovery. You can find a lot of good articles talking about how to do it. There are specific ways you should use to ask questions. Instead of, for example, ask people how I'm going to make this app. Is that app useful? And that's a very bad question, because most time they're going to tell you, yeah, it's good, right? So you need to do a different approach to ask questions to verify your idea. Okay, but anything you guys are thinking right now for this project, make sure you can answer these two questions really well. Okay, what problem can you solve, and is that a real problem? Okay, so these are the things I want to share with you from these two examples. And then some of you might think, okay, yeah, so this looks pretty, reasonable, but these are startups, right? So no, these are not, doesn't seem to be very successful startup. I agree, this is not a very successful startup. But I also want to tell you, even for the big companies, they are actually making exactly the same mistakes, right? So before I share with that one, so this one here shows you the technologies, right? So we have for this AR project, and it's very, very technical. Even today, it's still very, very difficult to do. There are a lot of feature extraction, feature mapping. How can you construct this 3D model from a bunch of 2D images? Okay, and this is a very lightweight and an easy way to build a 3D model just by taking pictures with your phone. Okay, the technology even today is still very competitive, but it doesn't make you to have a success startup. Okay, so that's why sometimes students ask me, "Oh, I have this opportunity to work for this startup. Should I go for it?" Okay, so again, my advice is always number one, answer the question I showed you earlier. Is that a good problem to solve that real problem? And secondly, if this is a technology, make sure that this is something useful rather than just something being cool. Okay, this whole mobile AR project, it's a very, very typical example that something very, very cool, but not really much useful. Even today, I mean, AR, if you think about AR, everyone understands the concept. There's really not much you can do about AR except some of the games. Okay, even for games, I mean, it's limited. I don't know how many of you are still playing Pokemon Go, but it's really, really limited. Okay, it's a kind of a cool thing to have for a moment, but not really useful. All right. So also another kind of example, sorry, I forgot this example. I need to share with you this one. All right, so it's the mobile security. This is a different company that I was involved at the same period of time. And then just, I need to go through this a little bit faster. They got a little bit more funding in the beginning, but only 1.5 years later, they raised more money. And then they got the next round of funding. So this is much more successful. So after they got the funding, they moved to the new office and then rebranded, and then also they got all this, supplies, snacks, everything got better after raising money. Okay, so anyway, so what they did was the mobile security. So they modified the Android operating system, and then allows people to manage how the phones will be used. I kind of briefly talk about this project in day one. So, for example, I can set some of the security policies that you can only use this app at certain situations, certain time, a certain location, or only on a weekend or something like that. So they use this one to manage how, for example, employees are using their phones, particularly for military and the government. All right. So this one turned out to be very successful because they sold this one to one of the major government agencies. And then, so when I talked to one of the founders, I asked him, well, how did you come with a security idea? It's such a good idea. And then I didn't realize that you were working on the security before. I know this founder very well. And then he told me that, well, it didn't really come with this idea by himself. It all come from one time he went to DC and to join a federal research meeting. And then this is not a real image, okay? I'm just trying to find an image to talk about a research meeting. So basically, the government said that, well, that was back in 2010, 2011. So the mobile computing is so popular and trending. But then the next big threat will be the how we're going to manage the security and make sure the information are all safe, right? So anyway, so the government was looking for more innovations and more willing to provide more funding to those kind of projects, right? So this guy actually got this idea, and then he was also a faculty at that time at the Virginia Tech, and he went back to university, and then he started to work on this research project on the cybersecurity on mobile. And then after he got this project done, he actually formed this company. And then once he got up a company, they make this one as a nice product, and then they went back to sell it back to the government. All right. So that's basically how this company worked out. I want you to compare this company with the first one. Okay. They're actually following two totally different paths. Okay, the second one I just mentioned, they got this idea by attending a government meeting. The government told everyone that cybersecurity in mobile is a big problem. Okay, we need to solve that problem. Who can solve it? So he went back to the university and did this research project, and then he made this as a product, as a company. He started to sell it. When he started to sell it, he went back to the government and told them, you see, we got this solution. Do you want to have it? And then, yes, so they got this deal. Okay, that's the path they were following. But then the AR company is different. I didn't talk too much. The AR company, they didn't really attend any of the meeting. They just basically, a couple of professors were doing the research in computer vision. They found this good way to do the 3D modeling with 2D images, and then they formed this company. So they got the company, they make a product, and now they need to sell it. Now they're just going to go all different companies, try to find out the problem, and then try to convince them to use this technology to solve the problem. But then we didn't know if the problem exists. And also we didn't know if there's a real problem. That's why this AR company went such a tough route in the startup, where the second one actually only did one sale, but very short, very quickly. So I really want you to keep in mind these two examples. All right, so they represent two very typical ways of building startups. Okay, I can tell you that for CS majors, for engineers, it's a very, very likely that you will fall into this wrong path, which is the solution-oriented path. Okay, I want to remind you that even though you're learning all the technologies every day, but okay, this is something really simple. All right, technology is only one step in this whole process of building a successful business or startup. Okay, you often need to come back to this first and most important one, and then from there you design your solution, and then you figure out what the technology you should use. I really don't want you to think about this way, such as, oh, I learned, for example, TensorFlow. I learned deep learning today. It seemed to be very, very advanced, very useful. I can use that one to classify images. I can use that one to recognize um, sound and do the input, voice recognition very well, very accurately. Now let me think about how can I build a startup with the deep learning technology. Can I use deep learning technology to predict the coronavirus situation? Can I use one to predict the stock market? All of this. Okay, so this is a very, very bad way of building a project or building a startup. But unfortunately, for most of the CS major, this is the way you normally will go with, right? Today you took a course online, you learned JavaScript. Tomorrow I learned, Node.js, very cool. I learned, some of this new mobile development stuff, right? Let me make an app. Let me make a web service. Okay, now let me think about what kind of idea I want to do for my app. And then you start to brainstorm. And I can tell you, if you go that route, very likely you will get a really, really bad idea. The reason I call it very bad idea is because eventually you got very excited about your own idea. You realize that you thought you found a very good idea for your project, but it turned out it's only something that you created just for you to fit into that technology field. Okay, it's a totally wrong direction. The best way to get this startup idea is you should forget about the whole technology. You should assume that you don't know anything about coding. Forget about the AI app. It really doesn't matter whether you use AI or app, okay, or just nothing, or maybe you just need a website. It doesn't matter. What really matters is the problem. That's why in many cases, the business majors can do a better job in identifying the problem because they really don't know anything about coding. They will not be, affected by the technologies. Where we always have a very technical mindset here. Always think about the implementation, always think about the coding part. Sometimes that become a kind of blocker for us to get the right problem. All right, so this part is particularly important, guys, because I kind of know you very well. Even myself, I have a very technical engineering-oriented mind. I like to think about the technology. I like technology, but that's really not the most important part. Okay, so I will come back to the beginning. Let me see some of the comments here. All right, so still playing Pokemon Go, and then all right. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Jimmy. That's not the real picture. It's not Obama. So it was just an image I found. All right. So again, some of the big company examples, guys. These are more interesting. You might think that I had a very naive startup experience, right? So I have to, yeah, I admit that if I do startup again, I won't make that kind of stupid mistakes. Like recently, the project I've been working on, I'm very, very careful on the problems. If I'm not convinced it's a big problem or real problem, I'm not going to spend my time to do that. All right. But I also want to tell you that the big company, they make the same kind of mistakes all the time. Okay. Amazon first. I'm going to talk more about Amazon later on. It's a very, very good company. Okay. Amazon's been so successful in the past 10 years, even they grow faster than Google and other companies. There are reasons behind it. But this is a very, very bad example, bad product Amazon made. Amazon actually made a phone back in 2014. I guess most of you don't even know it. At that time, when I was teaching this class, some students were still knowing it. I know this one very well because when I was working in Amazon, they were already making it. That was back in 2010 and 2011. So they spent 3 or 4 years to make the phone. They hired so many people from Windows Phone team at that time in Seattle. They spent so much money, and eventually in mid 2014, they released their first phone. When we were making the browser, we also were making the browser for this phone, but because this phone is such a top secret project in Amazon, nobody are supposed to talk about it. So we cannot even mention this project in our team, even though there were certain people working on the browser for the phone. we have to call it a project B. Okay, you can't really say as a browser for the Amazon phone, even though everyone knows that we're making the phone. So that was the story. However, this phone only sold for 3 or 4 months, and then Amazon just cut it, just get rid of it. You can't refund the Fire phone anymore. It's a total failed project. Okay, but I have to tell you that this project, this phone, is actually really, really well designed and very, very technical. Okay, I'll show you one example here, guys. Let me play this short video. Jeff Bezos did a demo back in 2014 to show one of the feature. Okay, this is a very cool feature.
60 times a second. Here it is. We call this dynamic perspective.
All right, not sure if you guys saw the idea. Okay, pretty much you take a phone. Okay, as you move tile the phones the different angle, the screen will show you the view slightly different, so that it gives you a real 3D experience. For example, if you look from the side a little bit, you can see more things behind the wall. And if you come back, and then it will hide it, something like that. So you still have the 2D screen, but they give you a better 3D experience. So they actually explain, you can find this video from YouTube. They explain how they did it, okay? This phone here, let me show you. They actually have, as you can see here, they have 1, 2, 3, 4 front-facing cameras. Because that was back in 2014. They used 4 front-facing cameras, not to take a picture, but to track your eyes. And today, I don't think we need that much hardware to support it. But that time, they used this many camera to just track your eyes so that they can implement this cool feature. And obviously, this is such a cool feature. They call it a dynamic perspective, very technical thing. Okay, not many people can do it. They did a lot of machine learning. All the hardware and software work together to make this feature. But so what, right? What can you do with it? And during the demo, they showed you you can have this very nice, interesting lock screen. Okay, you have this 3D lock screen. That's one. You can play a couple of games with this. And they also showed a little like a Google Map feature that when you do the 3D view, you can kind of move your phone a little bit. And none of the features are useful. The games may be interesting, but not all the phones support this feature. The lock screen, who's gonna pay, some money for a nicer lock screen, right? It does not solve any problem with this kind of feature, right? And this, I think, is even worse than that AR project, right? But that's how the big companies are thinking, because Amazon, they think they have good technology, they have engineers, they can make product like this, they can do machine learning, and this is a feature nobody else can do it. So they spend a lot of time actually talking about this one, not only demo this one, but also Jeff Bezos, we're talking about how things have been implemented. You can still find that example, all right? But because of this, this phone didn't sell at all, right? They probably wasted so much money on this project, right? Because they worked on this phone for 3 or 4 years, right? So that's why even for big companies, if they forget about this important principle, if they're too obsessed by the technology, it will go to a wrong direction, right? So Google Glass, again, this was a kind of early project for you guys. I think you were probably, this is around 2011, 2012. Not sure how many of you have heard about this one, remember anything. Again, you don't really hear about this one anymore, but at that time, after the iPhone, Google Glass was really, really popular. And I got a chance to try this one. Not many people get a chance, but at that time they had a beta version for developers. We actually, tried this one with our AR project. And I have to tell you the truth that I got this glass. I spent only half the on it. I probably never touch it again. All right, so it's not much you think you can do. Okay, so this one here is not like the today's AR glass that, for example, the Microsoft HoloLens that give you a better experience. But this glass only has a little tiny screen that you look at, look up a little bit and see a little screen here. There's not much you can do. The only feature I find useful was taking first-person videos or pictures. And other than that, you know, a lot of things are based on voice recognition, based on sound output. You can receive a lot of text. It's not very convenient. Pretty much it's useless, right? Really useless. Not to mention a lot of these privacy issues on some other like interaction issues. That's why they cut this project um, around the end of 2013. They never even saw it to the public. They just cut it right away, and they realized all these problems. Yeah, I actually still have this class in my office. Okay, when if you guys are interested, feel free to stop by next time, and then you can still play around with it. I can guarantee I gave this one to many people. You probably only will spend like around half day to 1 day, maybe 2 days. Okay, to play around with it. That's it. You don't have motivation to take it again. Not like your phone. You can't live without it. For this guy, you can live totally fine without it. Okay, so you're not gonna touch it even. All right, so that's a very failed project from Google. They probably waste more money on this one. So the Apple Watch or smart watch, I won't call it a failed project because this one at least, you know, you still have the watch feature, right? So if people like to wear a watch, at least this is a good accessory to have. So because of that, I think they still sell the watch. However, I personally never use this one, but I doubt how useful this apps, the software side can be on this watch. I bet everything you can do with this one, you can get a much better and more convenient experience with your phone, except some of these fitness features like the trackers and then heartbeat, those kind of things, may be more convenient. But other than that, well, I really don't see the motivation of using a smartwatch. But as I mentioned, I agree that for people who normally wear a watch, this is a good alternative. That's different. All right. So all of this example from these big companies, they share something in common, and they are all following iPhone's path. They want to become the next iPhone. They all see this big innovation and impact created by Apple. They want to be the next iPhone, but you know they miss this important point of all the problem. Right? iPhone is successful because they have very good design. They got a good software, but more importantly, iPhone was successful at that time because they solved such a big problem. I think I shared this one in some of the mobile classes, right? You can find out Steve Jobs, the first iPhone conference where they released the product. That to summarize, at that time, the iPhone is successful because at that time, people were using different devices for different things. They use the cell phones to make calls. They use a computer to go to the internet. They use MP3 players. Not sure if you guys know MP3 players to play all the music. But these are the three different devices to do three different things. And then the iPhone can make all of this together. So one device for everything. So from that point of view, iPhone actually solved a huge problem. That's why it was such a more significant than some of this other phones later on today we see today. Today you got a nicer screen, better UI, OS, all of this, but you're not really solving any of the new problems, right? So all these Google glasses, the Amazon phone, and smartwatch, they kind of miss this point about the problem. Okay, they're only trying to do it like very engineering. Try to make engineering very very technical and very nice, but they kind of moving too far away from that problem domain. Okay, so that's kind of my opinion. All right. So with that, I want to talk a little bit more about Amazon. Okay, this is the part I didn't share too much before. So Amazon, except that phone example, okay, so they rarely make that kind of bad project. Okay, I'm very surprised that they made that kind of project. But in general, Amazon is very, very successful in terms of you know uh, maintaining their customers and then being nice to customers. That's why some of these polls shows Amazon's brand is really have very good reputation. Okay, this is not the latest data, but then if you see the latest data, I think Amazon is always the top three. Okay, much better than Apple or some other companies. So basically, this is how the customers are viewing Amazon. All right, but for this one, I will just show you exactly why Amazon has such a high reputation. Now, you guys don't really feel it. I worked there before, so I have a very clear view on why this one is the case. And that's why I think Amazon is a very, very special company. Not many companies can compete with them. Okay, they got really strong cultures on some of the very important things, and then a lot of companies don't have it. All right, I will tell you why. So once you get into working in Amazon, they're going to give you some of these company cultures, and one of the most important things is something called a customer centric. They call it a customer obsession. Basically, you need to think about everything from the customer point of view, make customer top priority. Now, this is a very, very easy and simple idea. In fact, if you hear the talk from all the entrepreneurs or some of the successful big companies, most of the CEOs and leaders will talk about the same thing. Everyone understands, of course, companies are important. The customer is not happy, then nobody's going to pay for you, right? However, for different companies, you will see a different kind of levels they can reach in terms of how good they are, how nice they are to the customers. And Amazon really put this one to a very, very high level, okay? To a level that you don't really even realize. I gave you some examples. Last time I showed you when we were making this browser, right? So we're trying to decide what to do for the browser 2.0. And we had so many features, and we have to decide what is the feature we need to work on and which one we need to work first. For example, I listed this one here. That was the real feature we were talking at that time. Speed, that's one thing. People want to have the private mode, the basic mode the browser will have. And, surprisingly, that's a feature that's requested by a lot of users. I guess you probably can think about why. And then they need some kind of other things like to save the bookmark, bookmark their pages, some of the getting the trending page, all of those. So you might be wondering, how do we get these features? Okay, so sometimes a lot of these things just come from the team, from the engineers, from the manager, from the director, from the bosses. That's actually very, very typical in the old days. But in Amazon, they never do this. This list of features will get really, really easily. They don't even need to have a brainstorm session. What happened is Amazon had this customer service. So, and you can call customer for any kind of different things, not just by this about the things you buy from Amazon, but all of the other services or product you're using. And you can call them. You will get people to answer your call. Okay, not like Google or other company, you can't really call them. And then so any kind of questions and complaint that you talked, the customer service will actually write it down and put that in the system. And if this one is about the product your team is working on, those requests will actually go to your team. So after 1 year, we got so many requests and problems and complaints from customer center about this specific browser. And you might be wondering, who is going to call about a browser? And I can tell you, there's so many people calling Amazon, asking questions. Oh, why I can't open my email? Why this YouTube video is not playing? How can I connect to my Wi-Fi from my device? Okay, you guys would never call that, but I can tell you, the people who are in their 60s and 50s or 70s, they will call Amazon to ask them, how do I get to my Wi-Fi? Why this YouTube video doesn't play? Okay, so that's where they got all the requests from customers. So when we're starting to plan the next set of versions, all we need to do is to pull all this complaint and requests from customers, and then just kind of look at which ones are the ones being mentioned most frequently, and then we prioritize them, and then to summarize, okay, this is the most wanted feature, and this one also being talked a lot, and let's finish this top 5 or 6 in the next version. All right, so this is just one example of how a technical team determines the requirements. We do not spend time to brainstorm features. Brainstorm features is really bad because it's all coming from engineers, man. You don't know what people are looking for. It just comes from all this customers' real feedback requirement, even though we don't have to talk to them directly, right? But this is only one team in Amazon. Amazon has thousands of teams working on thousands or hundreds of thousands of products and features every year. If every team is following this kind of approach to decide what they want to work on next version, you can think about how they can improve customer experience from different services and different products, right? And again, not many companies can do this. Okay, some companies want to do that one, but they don't have the data and they don't have the resource to work on that, right? Now, this example is even better. It's still about customers. In the second version of the Kindle Fire tablet, they released a feature called Amazon Mayday. Now, this feature is very simple. Basically, you click on this button at the top. It's called Mayday. What it does is connect you to a customer representative. You have questions, they will answer you, and then they would actually do a video chat with you so that you can see the customer representative, and then they can help you like by the video live chatting. What's more important is they can see your screen. They can actually point out how do you do this and that. They can help you to solve the problem, such as how do I get my Wi-Fi, how do I open my email, right? So as you can see, pretty useful, right? So you can have the customer to kind of help your device and technical issues easily. But I want you to think a little bit about the effort they need to build this feature. Number one, they need to build this software system to support all this live chatting and then all this screen sharing stuff. But more expensive part is they need to maintain such a big customer service team that they need to have people, waiting and sitting there nicely to be able to ready to do the video chat and for all of these issues, right? And you can see they said their goal is to get 15 seconds or less when some people is requesting a help, and then during the peak season, the response time is only 9 seconds. So you can think about how many people would have to pay to support this kind of feature. I'm sure you guys all agree this is something useful, but I want you to think about from business point of view. How many of you would like to buy this device by seeing there is a Mayday feature? How many of you will actually decide to buy this one over iPad because this one has a Mayday feature? Very few, right? Most of the time you will care about how is the hardware specs, what is the app supported, how is the screen, how is the overall experience. Nobody really cares about this Mayday feature, right? So that's what I'm saying. Amazon did a lot of these things not from the revenue point of view. They did this only because they had so much tough time to helping customer to fix this problem, how to get Wi-Fi, how to open the email, how to just play the YouTube video. So in the next version, they invest all the money and try to solve that problem. They know this money is not going to bring the actual revenue for them, but they know they want to kind of be customer centric. In the long term, they will build a better reputation. They will actually grow much more. Okay, so this is something that you really need to think about differently. Okay, so everybody knows customer is important, but when it comes to money, investment, and then building things like this, that's not related directly with the sales. Not every company can do it or have the brave to kind of move to that direction. But Amazon did so many of this. Okay, this is only one example. They built a locker that you've probably seen this one before. This is more common, but they started this project back to 2011. One of my friends did an internship to start this project. And then they just want to try to solve a very simple problem. People deliver things to your house and then you're not at home. And then what do? Right? So they built this locker, put a locker in all the different cities, and then you can just go there to pick it up, much more convenient. The drone is trying to help you to do the delivery. So, but that's more kind of still an experimental project. There's another business I know very well internally, but most people don't know. So Amazon actually do some little like loan and bank kind of feature. For example, they can lend the money to some of the sellers. In Amazon, you can sell things at the third party sellers to have your own seller's account. And so what they do is they can actually, if you need the inventory, if you don't have money, they can lend you money. Of course, you pay for interest, right? The reason they do this is because they actually find that a lot of the sellers in their platform selling stuff are struggled with the funding, with the inventory, and then they can see that some of them, if they have this kind of money, they will do better. So that's why they kind of create this whole finance department, try to help the sellers and then to do better. And they try to simplify all this loan process because they understand how the customers are selling over the time. They kind of have a good estimate on their revenue, and then they got a pretty low interest, and then they lend the money to help the customers to make more money. right? So again, this feature is so meaningful because they see the data, they help them solve the problem. That's why this is the feature that we don't talk too much, but they actually makes tons of money. Even 5 years ago, one of my friends that works in the team, they actually make billions of dollars just by doing all these loans already. So just another kind of example on how they focus on customer and then get all this, uh, good things done. All right. So I'm kind of running out of time, guys. Let me just finish the last slides. So this best example, another very, I won't say the best example, but a really good example I personally experienced. This was back in 2012 when I was doing company. One day, I think it's 2012, it's June 2012 in the summer. Google's I/O conference announced that they are starting this Google Cloud platform. Some of you might have used this one. It's the Google's cloud computing platform. So they at that time, Amazon AWS was already very popular, and then Google started to do their cloud computing, and with a big announcement, a lot of the demos looks really cool. And I will tell you that a lot of engineers inside of Amazon, I was in the AWS team at that time, and I felt a little bit nervous because that's Google, right? We're talking about cloud computing, we're talking about servers, internet, right? Google is actually more qualified to do this than Amazon. When people think about Amazon, people think about Amazon as an e-commerce site. They can't connect Amazon with, the cloud computing internet. People think Google is more technical, like more capable of doing this. That's why even engineering in Amazon, they feel that at Google engineering even more smarter. Maybe they can do better, right? So people start to feel a little bit nervous. Oh, Google is competing with Amazon now. AWS is not going to lead in anymore, right? So I remember really clearly that that year later on, we had a whole AWS department meeting. Over 1,000 engineers were participating. The head of AWS, Andy Jersey, he's really a famous guy right now in Amazon because the AWS grows so well. He just said one thing really kind of shocked me. I still remember that. I think it was a very good guidance. So he kind of pointed out that yes, there is a competition, right? Google is coming. He didn't really talk about Google, but he was talking, everyone knows it's about Google, right? There is competition. There's always competition going on in any kind of the industry. But if you want to win this competition, you should, instead of focusing too much on your competitors, you should spend more time to work with your customers. That's kind of the mindset everyone should keep when you are trying to fighting with a big competitor. And that actually, I really want you to think more about what they said, because in many cases, when you are facing a direct competitor, you feel very nervous. And every day you start to look at what the other is doing. Which part he's doing better? Which part he's doing worse? Is he getting a better and cheaper server I don't have? Or is he creating a new feature that's so good idea I don't have it? And if that's the case, should I actually build that again to catch up? Or should I lower my price to also afford something and offer something that comparable? That's a very common way of dealing with competitions. You're trying to compete with your competitor in every single aspect. You try to win the competitor, but that's actually a very wrong way of winning the competition. The best way is exactly what Amnon mentioned. You actually need to work harder, spend more time with your customer to make your customer even happier, and building more features they request. Deliver more of those features. You can even forget about your competitor, because eventually, if you satisfy the customers, you will win the competition eventually. All right. So again, these kind of things are not you can get in every company. A lot of companies, when they are dealing with the competition, they will actually tend to think more about the competitors. Everything they are doing is try to hurt the other competitor, right? So that's why even today, when you look at this one, Google is not even a competitor anymore. I think the only one that's doing better right now is Microsoft Azure, because they have the whole Microsoft stack. But all the other companies, pretty much they're so far behind in the cloud computing market. All right, so that's some of the example I tell you about Amazon. But the key idea here, guys, is focus on that problem. Okay, so I'm kind of running out of time today. Sorry about late, but I kind of put this second homework here. Okay, let me go through that really quick. There's still something I have for some other examples next time, but at least today you should start to think about this one, okay? So your next assignment is to work with your team to identify this idea. And as I mentioned, this idea is wide open, but it has to solve a real world problem. Also, I want you to conduct a little user study. So basically talk to 2 potential users, depending on the idea you identify, and have a short interview and get a video. And then next week, next Thursday, we'll have every team to very quickly pitch your project ideas. Show the video, talk about what the problem you're trying to solve, and then so that we can kind of get more inspiration. But on Thursday, I will share you some more example from our students. Okay, so that you can still get idea on what others are doing. Okay, that's why last time some people asked me what others have done. It really doesn't matter. I want you to go to your life, your field, to identify the problems you're familiar with, and then from there to derive some of the solutions. All right. So I think that's all I'm going to share today. Okay. So it's we're running too much time out of time. Okay. I will record a video, put that into YouTube. I still have time, guys. Feel free to stay here if you have questions. Otherwise, I will see you on Thursday. On Thursday, I will talk more about the student projects and what we have seen before in terms of some of the good and successful examples.